The law in this case is being used to take out Donald Trump. They haven't been able to take him out in any other way. A man impeached twice for nothing. A man criminally investigated during half of his administration for nothing. Russia collusion. Didn't happen to Hillary Clinton. When the law becomes corrupt, there is no law. When the law becomes corrupt and it's in the hands of a certain niche or elite of the population, it's a weapon. The law is no longer used to keep order, justice, equality, to preserve the civil society. The law is used to destroy what exists and replace it with something else. This is what George Soros knows. This is what Alan Bragg knows, not philosophically as I'm discussing, but he knows. This is what the Department of Justice knows. This is what the U.S. Attorney in the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. knows. Biden doesn't know it as a matter of intellect. He knows it as a matter of instinct. Get a hold of the law and you control everything. Everything. And that's what's happening. Lenin said it. Stalin did it. Mao was a Stalinist. Trotsky, believe it or not, opposed it. So they killed him. But that's what's taking place in our country today. That's why they're trying to fill the judiciary with like-minded ideologues. That's why they're trying to destroy the Supreme Court, pack it, expand it with like-minded ideologues. That's why they're putting prosecutors in place to destroy the civil society. That is, rising crime. That's why you have city councils in our cities, the most radical of city councils, voting to eliminate law enforcement or voting to undermine law enforcement. This is how you take down a country. And by the law, you have to understand the most superior law in our country is the Constitution. And look how that's under attack. The Electoral College is under attack. Separation of powers is under attack. The Bill of Rights are under attack. It's all under attack. So the next step is to teach our children to hate our country. It's going on throughout the classrooms now. Critical race theory. It's a method where you use race to attack the country and everything it stands for. Pull down the monuments. They talk about book burning. Well, books that are explicit about pornography and sex do not belong in elementary school libraries. That's what we're talking about. What they're talking about is a book like American Marxism or Liberty and Tyranny, which they will never allow in public school because it talks about our history and the threat to it. But this is why they attack the great thinkers, the great writers, the author of the Declaration of Independence, the authors of the Constitution. It's also why they don't teach about John Locke and Montesquieu and men like that, Aristotle, Cicero, Marx, Engels, Hegel, Rousseau. They teach about the ideologies that destroy the human individual. What's going on in New York, and quite frankly Atlanta, and the special counsel in Washington, D.C., is the culmination of these attacks on our civil society and the ideologies and philosophies that undergird it. In the case of Donald Trump, we have a prosecutor in Washington, D.C. that destroyed attorney-client privilege with the help of an Obama-appointed judge on our last day in office. And you had an Obama-appointed judge, the chief judge, who handled every single motions request that came from the Trump people for the last several years regarding the grand jury and other aspects of the investigation, and she ruled against Donald Trump 100% of the time. That's the death of law. You have an individual in Atlanta who put together a grand jury You heard the foreman. She's 30 years old. She's a whack job. Absolute head case. And she was all over television, and the judge who oversaw that proceeding said she's fine. She can go talk, say whatever she needs to talk about. That's when you put a gag order in place. Not on a defendant. Not on a candidate who's running for president of the United States. Not on a former president. You put it on a juror, grand juror, who can't keep her mouth shut. The judge thought it was fine. And now there's another grand jury that's going to look at what that grand jury did, not to look at it to question it, to look at it to decide and cherry pick what it wants to take from that grand jury to bring charges against the president. And understand, in every grand jury, the defense side is never heard. Their lawyers aren't heard. People who go in front of grand juries are not permitted to have lawyers. It was set up really as a citizens panel that was supposed to be a check on prosecutors. And it's been perverted into a prosecutors panel that is used to manipulate the law and go after individuals, in the case of Donald Trump. And then Manhattan. Here we have a matter that's very old, involving a non-disclosure agreement, a letter from Stormy Daniels who says she never had a relationship with Donald Trump. She wrote it herself on her stationery. We have a letter from Michael Cohen's first lawyer. This is from 2018, both letters, in which Michael Cohen says that Donald Trump didn't know what he was doing. It was his own money because he was trying to protect Melania and Donald Trump. Michael Cohen is one of these sleazeballs who claws their way to the top. You can tell he's a very dumb guy. I don't know how he got a law degree. Well, there's a lot of dumb guys with law degrees, actually. And so here he gets a law degree. He's on TV. He's weaseled his way into the Trump organization. There's no loyalty to anybody. He goes to prison because he's a liar. He's also a coward. He pleaded guilty to a few charges that were ridiculous involving campaign finance. But he thought he'd get a better deal, and he didn't. So he's on a retribution campaign. And yet his lawyer wrote a letter saying that Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. These are contemporaneous pieces of evidence, documents, that apparently weren't shown to the grand jury by Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor, but were shown by another lawyer who at one point represented Cohen, Costello. He brought a stack of documents in that apparently the grand jury had never seen. That's a basis for disbarment of the district attorney right on its face. The problem is the bar's controlled by the Democrats. The court's controlled by the Democrats. The grand jury's controlled by the Democrats. This case was examined by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, which takes some of the most complicated cases in the country. That U.S. Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Northern Virginia. These are complicated cases, CIA, FBI, what have you, financial. And they turned it down from a federal law perspective. The prior district attorney in New York, Cyrus Vance, very partisan, he looked at it. He also had run for election many, many times and had won. And he turned it down from a state law perspective. Alvin Bragg got elected in part by claiming that he was going to charge Donald Trump and that nobody was better at suing the Trumps, that he had sued the Trumps hundreds of times. That's what he said before he got elected. And that nobody better to take down Donald Trump than him. And that he was going to take particular interest in this case and oversee it himself. When Bragg came into office, he turned down the case after looking at it. Then something happened. About a year and a half later, he took the case up again. Donald Trump announced he was running for president in the Republican primary. His poll numbers were very strong. And Alvin Bragg decided he wanted to take him out. I don't believe he decided that on his own. Could have, but I don't believe it. There's a guy who got elected with help from Soros. Soros denies even knowing him. That is irrelevant. Soros pours millions and millions of dollars into an organization as a wash-through that then gives the money to the campaigns of these various prosecutors. Moreover, his son and his daughter-in-law gave individual contributions to Bragg. So the idea he didn't know Bragg personally is irrelevant, but the idea he didn't know who Bragg was is a flat-out lie. So he's got a clear Soros connection. He's a radical leftist. He's like an AOC type, or a Talib type, or an Omar type. That's who Bragg is. By the way, he came from a very well-to-do family. This isn't a guy who worked his way up the ladder and really had to scratch his way out of poverty. No. As most of these radical revolutionaries are. Lenin, when you look at them, Mao, Marx, these were not poor people of the proletariat. So anyway, Bragg decides to take this case up. Now, he has an assistant who he brings in from the private sector, who is a Democrat, former federal prosecutor, who wrote a book and was furious that Bragg had not brought the case. He quit in protest, and very loudly so. And in his book, he talks in detail about the investigation, how he wanted to get Trump, how he didn't take any money, he came in on a volunteer basis, and on and on and on. He should be disbarred for two reasons. Number one, you don't talk about an ongoing investigation like this if you're a prosecutor who was involved in it. And number two, what he said. He came in there to get Trump and take out Trump. You know, we tend to forget that these prosecutors and these assistant and deputy prosecutors, they're all flesh and blood. They're not better than you and me. They're not people who've decided that they will be completely impartial, even though they're required to be under the ethics rules. How do you stop them? They say, this is the law and this is what's happening. So the law in this case is being used to take out Donald Trump. They haven't been able to take him out in any other way. A man impeached twice for nothing. A man criminally investigated during half of his administration for nothing. Russia collusion. Didn't happen to Hillary Clinton. Didn't happen to the Biden family. Joe Biden has escaped scrutiny, and Joe Biden is a crook. He's corrupt. He's made millions from the communist Chinese military. His family has made millions from these front groups. It's just shocking what's taking place in this country.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.